There is a moment in almost every teacher's career when you realize something uncomfortable but deeply important. The biggest influence on a child's language learning is not the textbook, not the curriculum, not even the teacher. It's the environment the child goes home to. And at the center of that environment, very often, are the parents, of course. Parental involvement in language learning is one of those topics everyone agrees is important. Yet very few people actually unpack what that means. Because involvement can look like encouragement, curiosity, and patience. But it can also look like pressure, comparison, anxiety, and unrealistic expectations. And the difference between those two paths is not academic, it is emotional, it is psychological, and it shapes not just how a child learns a language, but how they relate to learning itself. And as I always say, sit down comfortably, get yourself a coffee, and let's get started.
Woo! Let's go!
I want to start by saying something very clearly, and maybe a little bluntly. Most parents are doing the best they can with the information, fears, and hopes they have. When parents push, they're rarely trying to harm. They're trying to protect. They're trying to open doors. Or they're trying to secure a future in a world that feels increasingly competitive and unforgiving. The problem is not intention. The problem is understanding. Language learning is slow, messy, non-linear, and deeply human. Parents often want it to be fast, clean, measurable, and reassuring. And that mismatch creates tension. In my years of teaching across different cultures, education system, and age groups, I've been to the full spectrum. I've seen it all. I've seen parents who never ask about English at home, but raise confidence. Curious communicators because the child feels safe and supported. And I've seen parents who drill vocabulary every night, correct every mistake, demand constant progress, and end up with children who freeze, shut down, or quietly begin to hate the language. So the question is not whether parents should be involved. They should. The question is how. Let's talk about what healthy parental involvement actually looks like. At its core, it is not about teaching. Parents do not need to become language instructors. In fact, when they try to replace the teacher, things often go wrong. Healthy involvement is about creating conditions, emotional safety, exposure, curiosity, and consistency. And if you want to know a little bit more about this safeguarding, I suggest you to go back a little bit, few episodes, where I actually sit down with Rachel Ballantyne and we were talking about safeguarding. Beautiful episode for all of you parents there, teachers as well. So, when a parent listens without correcting every sentence, they're teaching confidence. When a parent shows interest, what did you talk about today? Instead of, what did you learn? They're reinforcing communication, not performance. When a parent celebrates effort rather than accuracy, they are aligning with how the brain actually acquires language. Research in second language acquisition has consistently shown that anxiety inhibits learning. A stressed brain does not absorb input efficiently. A child who feels judged, rushed, or compared is not in learning mode. They are in survival mode. And yet, many well-meaning parents unknowingly create exactly the environment by focusing too much on outcomes and not enough on process. This is where comparison becomes especially dangerous. Your cousin can already speak. Other kids in the class are better. At your age, you should, or something like it. These statements don't motivate, they erode. They turn language into a scoreboard rather than a tool for connection. And over time, children internalize a simple belief. Language is something you can fail at as a person, not just as a learner. Now, let's address a hard truth that educators don't always say out loud. Parents' own insecurities often drive their involvement. Parents who were denied opportunities project urgency. Parents who struggle academically project pressure. Parents who fear the future project control. None of this makes them bad parents, but it does mean their emotions enter the learning space. And that is why one of the most powerful things a parent can do is regulate themselves before trying to regulate their child. Calm, trust, and patience are not just personality traits, they are pedagogical tools. And another critical misconception is the idea that more input always means better results. Parents sometimes believe that constant exposure, more classes, more homework, more drilling will automatically lead to fluency. But language acquisition does not work like muscle hypertrophy. Rest, integration, and play are not luxuries. They are necessities. Children need time to process, to internalize, to let language settle. And before we continue, I want to give a quick shout out to Frame Flow, the creative studio behind our new podcast cover. They specialize in premium cinematic quality video production, editing, and graphic design, and they're based in Nanning, China. If you are a content creator or personal brand looking to level up your visuals, you can book your first project and contact them directly via WeChat or WhatsApp. Learn more at frameflowcn.com. And let's continue. And one of the healthiest forms of parental involvement is modeling. When children see parents curious about language, asking about words, enjoying songs, watching content together without turning it into a lesson, they absorb the message that language is part of life, not a task to complete. You don't need to speak perfect English to do this. You need presence, not proficiency. Let's also talk about trust. Trust in the teacher, trust in the process, trust in the child. Trust does not mean disengagement. It means alignment. When parents and teachers are on the same page, children feel it immediately. Mixed messages create confusion. If a teacher emphasizes communication and a parent emphasizes correctness, the child is caught in the middle. This is why communication between parents and educators is so important. Not just logistical updates, but philosophical alignment. What is our goal? Fluency? Confidence? Exam success? Long-term competence? These goals are not mutually exclusive, but they require different timelines and different forms of support. Parents also need to understand something deeply liberating. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are evidence of growth. A child who is silent and accurate may actually be avoiding risk. A child who speaks freely and makes errors is often further along cognitively. Parents who understand this stop correcting every sentence and start listening for meaning. There is also a cultural dimension. This is something that cannot be ignored. And in some educational cultures, parental pressure is normalized, even expected. Success is collective, and failure is shared. In others, autonomy is prioritized. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. But language learning, by its nature, requires vulnerability. And vulnerability does not thrive under fear. One of the most beautiful things I've witnessed is when parents shift from managers to allies. When they stop asking, "Are you good at English?" and start asking, "Do you enjoy using it?" When they replace, "You need to study more," with, "How can I support you better?" That shift changes everything. So, what can parents practically do? They can create routines without rigidity. They can expose without forcing. They can listen without correcting. They can celebrate effort, not just results. And perhaps, most importantly, they can allow their children to have their own relationship with the language. One that is not burdened by adult fears. Language is not just a skill, it is identity, voice, and connection. When parents honor that, they don't just help their children learn English, they help them grow into confident communicators in any language, in any content. And for educators, listening to this, our role is not only to teach students, but to guide parents gently, respectfully, and honestly. We're translators, not just of language, but of process, expectations, and reality. When we build that bridge, everyone wins. Parental involvement is powerful, used wisely. It accelerates learning, builds confidence, and creates lifelong learners, an emotional distance from language. The difference lies not in effort, but in awareness. Until next time, keep supporting learning with patience, guiding growth with empathy, and remembering that language flourishes where trust lives.